Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and we are here tonight with the one and only James J.D. Wright, as he has completed his second official full marathon with Team Impossible at the Columbus Marathon 2024. Guys, we worked all last year to bring an awesome event to the Columbus Marathon and to our team, and we came back and did the same thing this year, and there were a lot of really fun experiences this year, and that's what I would overall label this year as, is it was just some of the most fun I've had in my life, and it was a great day with the team, with all the other runners and everyone out at Columbus Marathon. So we wanted to hop on, give you guys a recap of the Columbus Marathon, chat about some of our favorite stories involved. Some of those people will be on the podcast here in the future, and wanted to get JD's insight, as he was the only member of Team Impossible this year to complete the full marathon, and wanted to get his perspective on thoughts of how he approached his race, how he ultimately overcame it, and what it meant to him to be able to cross that finish line once again. So thanks for coming back on, JD.
All right. Thanks for having me again. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been a minute. Were you on? You were on earlier in the year as we were talking about some of the marathon stuff, I think.
We were. The last time I've been on is last time I was on when we were doing like our intro to running videos.
Yeah.
Yep, that intro series.
Yeah, we did a series. If you guys want to go back and check that out, actually, in the beginning of this year, 2024, we did a series on basically, as somebody who's never really run before, how would you kind of approach a training strategy to get yourself prepared for a half or full marathon. We break down running technique, fueling, training plans, all sorts of stuff, and it's a lot of great information. JD helped guide us through a lot of that, and you can go back and check that out if you want to join us in 2025, but we will chat more about that later. But I wanted to start just kind of chatting about the day. It was, and really what this year was so interesting to me because of just comparing and contrasting it in so many ways to last year in 2023. And I think the biggest difference for me, and in some ways some of the most enjoyable difference, was that last year was without a doubt just a massive honor to go through that journey and be a part of that entire experience and witness just the very best parts of humanity that you guys showed us in fundraising and support and advocacy. But what was really cool about this year was, last year was like our main goal. It was like our sole focus in life. And we worked so hard, like tirelessly, like mile after mile and then hour after hour on fundraising, posting, doing all the things. And I don't think I had even realized how incredibly involved it was until we were done, and you kind of have this thing where you're working day and night full time for something, and there were points we were pushing ourselves to the edge to try to make things happen, and we did, and it was an amazing experience, and it was so cool. And then this year we come into it, it was a much more relaxed feel, and it felt like last year I was in such a bad state of my health, and I'll give you guys another episode sometime breaking this down, but we've actually figured a lot of things out finally, and got me a lot more squared away coming into this year's race. But last year I was just so focused on trying to grind and make this happen. And this year it felt like I just kind of got to step back and just be a part of it, and that was such a cool perspective for me from like day one when we get up there. It's just like I just felt like part of the group, and we were just hanging out, having a lot of fun, having a good time. And we show up race day and same kind of feel, just hanging out, having a good time. There wasn't any of this like apprehension or this fear or this like kind of ominous like thing looming over. At least it didn't feel like it was looming over me at the time. I want to grab your thoughts too. It was just kind of hanging out, having fun, and enjoying the moment with the incredible people around us. And that was, both experiences were amazing and life-changing, and it was an honor to be a part of them. But this year it was incredibly refreshing for me to be able to just kind of take a step back, take it all in, breathe, and just enjoy it. And that fueled a lot of very fond memories from this race. But I wanted to get your thoughts, because I know for me, I was coming in to do the half, and there were certainly a lot of impossible things involved in that. And I wasn't sure that I would be able to complete the race, even in the situation I was in. But I wanted to get your perspective on it, because I knew you were chasing the full again. And even though you'd done one before at this point, when you go from the half to the full, there's definitely still always this, I feel like even if you're an incredibly experienced runner, it's one of those situations where at any moment something can go horribly wrong and derail your race. And so I wanted to get your perspective, like what were some of the main differences like you noticed between 2023 and 2024 with the Columbus Marathon?
I think to start out with was the weather. I haven't looked it up from last year, but I want to say the weather last year was more what you would expect for an October race, where it stayed pretty cool throughout the day, kind of more of the 50s kind of weather.
It was very cool last year. Like I wore my long sleeve the entire race. I had my tank on underneath of it, expecting to wear it, but I had my long sleeve on the whole race because it was very, very cool last year.
Yeah, and I probably could have worn my long sleeve the entire race last year as well if I had maybe prepared a little bit better with the electrolytes. I just got a little bit overheated near the end and then was able to change out. And that's kind of what is a good segue, because that's what happened to me this year. Like I knew at the start of the race it would be in the mid 40s, kind of early 40s as far as weather went. And I think within like even as close as an hour and a half, it jumped from like 45 to 65, which is what I saw what we were going to expect. And I knew that would be a challenge, especially for me going a further distance than just a half.
Yeah. And it was wild to me because when we showed up that morning, I didn't really think it felt too awful cold outside. Like it was definitely a chill in the air, but it didn't feel too awful cold. And as a matter of fact, like the first mile I stopped to adjust and redo my prosthetic, and I ended up taking my long sleeve off there because I was like, I'm already starting to sweat a good bit. Like I can probably shed this now and, be ready to go as it keeps warming up. But then very quickly I noticed I felt, because the race starts kind of just as the sun's starting to come up.
Yeah.
And as soon as I took that long sleeve off and started going a little bit further, it felt like it actually got colder in those first few miles as the sun came up. Did it feel that way to you at all?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was maybe for you, it could have been more like, I don't know, nerves really is the thing, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it's just because our like long sleeve shirt is so good at like keeping all the heat inside that it felt colder because like all of that was being released in a mile or two.
Yeah. Shout out to Bora Team, where they're a USA based company in Wisconsin, and they've made our jerseys the last 2 years now. They create a phenomenal product. Like I'm telling you guys, like better than Under Armour, better than Nike, better than any other athletic apparel out there. They are custom wear for, they make them for triathletes specifically. So they're meant to handle, swimming, biking, running, and everything in between, all temperatures, all stages of the world, anything you could ever get involved in. So their ability to sweat wick and manage temperature is incredible for the material that it is, and it's definitely a good one to check out if you need some great performance day wear. Check them out, and if you need one of our Team Impossible jerseys, just reach out to us and we'll get you set up. But yeah, it was just a much different morning, I think, in a lot of ways, but it still had that exact same feel at the start line of that incredible energy and excitement, and just I've just never felt the same way at the beginning of a race as I do at Columbus Marathon. There's just something different about it to me, and I don't know if it's the music or the fireworks, and I know a lot of it is just having the kids there. who are actively going through treatment, but there's just a different feel in the air. And this year in particular, it was a massive feeling of excitement, I thought.
It was definitely a little bit of excitement for me. I definitely won't lie and say I didn't have nerves beforehand.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm so thankful for you guys that last year it was a lot of nerves. And then this year, everyone was pretty, like you said, everyone was kind of more relaxed and chill. And that kind of helped me too.
Yeah.
I kind of needed maybe a moment before the start of the race just to like get my last minute jitters out for a second. But.
Well, and I imagine like that race will always have some level of that for you.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a little bit of a flashback of, the 2018 one of like not finishing. And I've always kept that shirt. I've always kept that medal, just something to always remind you, not to make you feel bad, but just always like, well, this is what your lowest point was. So it's all going to be up from here.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's highly important to do that, to serve as a stark reminder to yourself how far you've come and the person you've built. And what's, if you guys don't know JD's full story, go back and listen. About a year ago, he came on the podcast to tell his story.
Episode 19.
Appreciate it. of facing the impossible in his own life and his battles with mental health, and how all of that ultimately started at the Columbus Marathon back in 2017, correct?
Yes.
And how he's become since then, the challenges he faced, where he got to ultimately, and then coming back a year later in 2023 to complete his first full marathon at that same race where a lot of his mental health battles started. I think it's a perfect example of our message and everything we preach, and how you can take the greatest challenges in your life, face them, build yourself into a person who is capable of overcoming them. And that's very, very much the process we mean when we say be impossible. And then ultimately you do something impossible, reinforcing to yourself that which you've already built internally. And that's exactly what JD did last year. And he came back out to do the same thing this year. And even though he'd already completed the full marathon last year, just by going back to that place, facing that same course that, caused so much pain in 2017, I think there's always going to be some level of kind of a mixed emotional reaction to that starting line.
There was, and like I said, you guys helped a lot, and I had done the Air Force half marathon in Dayton a month before, and so I was at least trying to learn from my mistake in that. It was the same kind of race that we ran in Columbus that I ran in Dayton that day about a month ago, where it just got really hot throughout the race, and I was very underprepared. I remember in that race I'd stopped sweating at like mile 3 or so of just doing a half, which is still not good. And I'm glad for the experience that I had in that race, but it was just I really want to go back and do that race for a similar reason in a year or two, or hopefully sooner, because it's one of those races where you just not do everything wrong, but a lot of things go wrong that you could have controlled. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad I did that race, because it helped me prepare for Columbus. And one of the things that I changed up for this race that I had not done in previous races is salt stick that we use makes an extra strength. I would call it more like a smaller tablet.
I didn't know they had an extra strength one. Yep. I'd be interested in that.
Mm-hmm. It's just the same thing as their little individual ones, but it's just like an extra strength one, kind of like a Tylenol-esque kind of idea.
Yeah.
But I took 2 of those before the race, because it's hard for me at least to try to take those during the race, during a marathon. So I wanted to be over prepared with electrolytes before I even got started with the full marathon.
Yeah, and we break all that down for you guys. The hydration piece of running a marathon is just as intricate as the fueling piece. Keeping enough energy in your body, keeping the water and electrolytes in your body to adequately fuel can be a very delicate balance. And we break that down for you guys all in the prior episodes I mentioned about kind of our intro to marathon training series. But yeah, there's all kinds of things that can happen. And I don't think any of us really anticipated it getting as warm as it did, as quickly as it did this year. Because it did get to be a pretty warm day, and I was sweating a lot. And I was hitting up every water station quite intensely. Because one thing I didn't do this year is I didn't bring my water bladder that I had last year. I had like a 3-liter water bladder. Had every intention of bringing it. Didn't bring it. And I'm a person who sweats a lot, just day to day, and then you go out and run a marathon and it becomes much, much more. And so that was definitely one of my big challenges that day too, was just trying to keep hydrated from any sense of the word. But those salt stick tablets JD mentioned are a great resource. They're literally just little chewable, almost like little candy pieces, like Tums or something. And they've got sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, all the major electrolytes your body needs to function and perform properly. But so we're at the starting line, surrounded by the team. And I think it was so cool. We got to see so many people this year. Like, I didn't see as many of our other team members last year, but like last year I remember being at the start line and I had bumped up to Corral B, not because I deserved to be there from a pace standpoint, but because I had the option to be there for the money we fundraised, and it would give me a little bit extra time to get across the finish line. So we went ahead and made that adjustment. And I remember being like totally by myself, and I was totally okay with that, because it was almost a feeling of that sense of, I've heard David Goggins talk about it before, like just before you're getting ready to go out and do something that's absolutely insane and impossible and well beyond what should be your means as a person, there's almost this kind of like mournful melancholy feeling. Mm-hmm. Not that you're sad you're there, not that you're sad you're doing it, but just this mourning, and not even in a bad way, but it's of the trial you're about to endure. And there's sometimes I very much admire that feeling, and it was certainly the case last year when I was at the start line, and I knew I was really about to enter into a space of something truly, truly immense, harder than anything I'd ever chased before or tried to attempt in my life. And, the gun goes off and it's just kind of this like, this isolation, just kind of like step, step, step kind of feeling. Whereas this year, it was totally different in that I was back in Corral D surrounded by like 10 members of Team Impossible. And we were just having a blast, having a good time. Jen was there being her awesome, amped up, excited self. And we all kind of crossed the start line together. And the race was off, man. And it was just a feeling of pure excitement and joy this year. Just thankful to be there, thankful to have the opportunity to show up and to get to do that race. So, I admire both feelings. I admire both situations. But it was really cool, really refreshing to have that sense of it this year, because I would say this is the first time I'd ever done a marathon level distance where I got to really experience that. Like, I didn't have, even though I still wasn't sure whether I'd complete the race or not, I didn't have a lot of jitters. I didn't have a lot of fear. I didn't have a lot of anticipation. It was just like I almost didn't care how it would turn out, because I was just having so much fun in the moment of experiencing it.
Yeah, I would say so. And the day before, we did a really great job too of fueling up, getting some good fuel in.
We did.
I think we really did not that we did poorly last year, but I really think that helped me more than I even anticipated. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's one of the first races maybe the first race I've ever done and run in my life, for how short I've been running, where I actually felt full the entire time I was running.
Okay.
So I really appreciate you and like everyone else, the night before, I think, keeping it relaxed and that kind of, because I remember last year feeling pretty tense, and that was hard for me to digest stuff when you're constantly feeling like pretty stressed and like worried for the next day. But like you said, this year was a little bit different. I appreciate everyone else keeping things relaxed, and that helped me more than, possibly could describe.
Yeah, and I think it's just another one of those pieces. Like last year, there was so much we were focusing on, like coordinating everybody, coordinating everything, making sure shirts were lined up and fundraising was lined up, and we'd talked to all the people we needed to talk to, and manage the team. Like we just had so much we were focusing on last year that it was hard to kind of step back and prepare ourselves in some of the way that we needed to, And I remember that too. Like we had a great team dinner last year at a phenomenal restaurant that unfortunately is not open in Columbus anymore. But even there at the restaurant, it's like all I could think about was the next day, whereas this year it was like, I felt like where we went to eat this year was just so much fun, and we just got to hang out and have a great sense of community with so many people, and we laughed and joked and ate a lot of food and just had a good time, man. It was a blast, and can't thank everybody who was involved this year enough for being a part of that experience and doing that with us, because it was so cool to see how so many people can just come together under one cause. Like we're all kind of chasing and facing our own unique challenges and battles in the face of that race. Yet we can all come together under the same umbrella of a cause and share in that experience together, share in the joy and the laughter and the fun and the excitement, as well as share in some of the pain and the hardship and the challenge of the race too. Mm-hmm. So going through your race, I wanted to kind of cover what your marathon experiences was like this year, because it was really cool for me. I didn't realize you started back in Corral D. And so I'm running through, and I don't know where it was. Like it was early on, like before we got to the first mile, right?
About 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, about 3/4 of a mile in. Here comes JD running up to catch me, and I'm like, I was so confused for a moment. I was like, did you already finish and you're like lapping me now? Or like I was so confused for a moment, because I just did not expect to see you at all during the race. And
I didn't know when I would see you, but I kind of felt bad too, because you were really trying to soak it in, and I was like, oh, I want to have this moment. But
no, you were good, man. I was so glad you came up behind me. It was so cool, because like you and I went through something so like special last year. Like we had been training together like since day one, and you helped carry me through so much of that race last year, and it was just kind of cool to have that moment together. It just kind of felt like going back to where it all began for a minute. We got to have a good little chat there for a moment, and then you were able to take off and really lock in your pace. But then I didn't really get to see you again at all till the finish line.
Sure.
And so I hadn't really had a chance to sit down and chat with you about like how your race went. And I wanted to hear your perspective, because you finished, your chip time ended up being like 5 hours, 30 minutes, right?
5:35. Yeah.
And that's like an hour and a half faster than you did it last year, correct?
And it is within the official, about 2 hours faster.
Yeah.
And this time I did officially finish and didn't DNFA.
Heck yeah, you did.
So that's what we were going for.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you got to cross the full finish line with the timer and everything. So yeah, what was the race like this year?
It was just strange that like you were saying, just to wrap things up, the day before went so well, better than I could have hoped for, of like preparing, and the week before like fueling up, like we've talked about, just carb loading a lot. This year I wanted to get in more proteins beforehand. I was still probably too tight going into that race, but I had let my muscles heal quite a bit. I think last year maybe I took a week and a half off, which I thought was too much. So this year I did more of like a week, where the week before the race I did a couple miles, but nothing strenuous, and took a week off instead of a week and a half. Then, like I said, Saturday went really well with last minute fueling, getting carbs in and everything. I think this year I really tried to not stay in my head as much, which I think you were alluding to. And I think thanks to everyone else and maybe the experience last year, I was able to. I really didn't actually sleep about 4 or 5 hours. It was a strange phenomenon those couple of days of that Saturday, of like knowing what was ahead and feeling nervous, and not really sure if I could do the marathon, especially because I got injured this year, and I've kind of had some setbacks, just like I did the year before. It was just different this year because I think last year I knew no matter how many miles I put in, even if I didn't finish, we had laid a foundation and we did something together that was pretty special. Whereas this year I wanted it in a selfish kind of way to be more about me. Like I wanted to do most of my training by myself. I wanted to figure out if I could just go from the beginning of the year to the end of the year and have it be nothing but no one else to blame or succeed but me.
You wanted to really like find your potential and like see like if I really like buckle down and tackle this, where can I take it?
Sure, exactly.
And that's awesome.
And I think even though I didn't actually run as much this year as I did last year because of getting injured and having the same IT band issues, you know, I was able to learn a lot more this year. And I think for me, especially being anxious, even though it cripples me of like doing things by myself sometimes, it's also the best thing I can do to do things by myself at times. So just to finish that up, there was a lot going into it on Sunday and I didn't get much sleep on Saturday, but oddly that didn't really, it was very similar to Austin telling his story about his Utah half marathon where despite not getting sleep, I think I just was locked in mentally and knew what we had to prepare for because of our experience last year. So I kept nerves down, was a little bit nervous, like I said, about 20 minutes before the race of like last minute realizations of like, oh, this is really about to happen. I don't know if I'm ready, but you know, got some extra electrolytes and water in and stretched pretty good. And so I didn't know when I would catch up to you, but I did want to have that moment with you at some point in the race. And I'm glad we did it pretty early. There was a pacer group for the 5.5 hour point. And one of the things that really helped keep me calm was I was hoping that I'd run into some people that were doing their first full marathon like me. And I found more than I could have could have hoped for. And I ran with some older guys that were the pacer group that had done many, many marathons together.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I believe this one gentleman said that he had ran across India at one point, ran like 1,000-mile races. So these were some, when I say older guys, I'm not making fun of them, but I am saying like not 40s, 50s, like 60s, 70s.
Heck yeah.
Of like doing these marathons. And it's just so amazing that there's people like that. And it really kind of inspires me to hopefully be like them one day.
Yeah.
When you can see somebody that's laid out the foundation of what you want to do beforehand. I ran with this really nice couple as well. The boyfriend, unfortunately, was only doing the half because he had I believe he said he had like maybe a fracture in his foot or something wrong with his foot where he broke a bone. And so he was just going to try to like gut out a half marathon, and he did, which was awesome.
Heck yeah.
And so the girlfriend was very nice, and we kind of all chatted and sort of got through miles 5 and 6 together. Nothing really notable about the race other than the first half, other than I was well over prepared electrolyte wise. So I actually took 2 bathroom breaks for the first half, which ended up being a good thing. It showed me a sign that I was still pretty well hydrated. The girlfriend's dad was also riding a bike sort of near the group as we were running. For those people not familiar with the marathon, there's different times at the marathon where, it's the entire section of road opens up. So you could have somebody on a bike, you could have somebody kind of run beside you to help you if you needed to. And so the only thing bad that ever happened in that first half is I did start cramping a little bit at 8 or 9. And so
I did the exact same thing.
Yep.
Just past the hospital, like my left calf started like really seizing up, and the next time I went to redo my leg, I popped like 10 salt sticks and it immediately fixed it. But that's funny. I had the exact same thing, same spot.
Well, it may have been close to that. To be honest, when you do 26 of them, it starts to kind of
they all blend together.
It does. The children definitely kind of stick out of like saying hi to them, and that what breaks up the miles in my mind. But yeah, the experience sort of in a fun way sort of blends together of like time sort of goes away and you're just sort of having this long fun experience throughout the day. But her dad kind of saved the day for me because he had some Tylenol, and I did not want to have any kind of issues throughout the race. If there was maybe one big mistake I had was not bringing something like that. I had brought tape. I had brought extra toilet paper in case you need it, and my gels all in my pack with water, of course, but I did not bring any pain relief because throughout my training, I really did not ever want to take one. Even if I was hurting one day, I really wanted my muscles to be able to, have that experience, but then kind of learn from it. So this race was it was good to learn that I needed to probably do more gym work for the next race I do if my muscles aren't quite strong enough to get through a marathon without needing a Tylenol. But regardless, I was very happy for him to give me that because I feel like that really probably, I don't know if it saved my race, but it certainly made it a lot better because of it. So I took one, like you said, probably mile 8 or 9, maybe a little bit before, got through the German village and passed the hospital through the German village. And I was looking for Austin as I was getting to the halfway point, and I think I did my first half in about what I was hoping for, about 2 hours and 45 minutes. I didn't know what my finish time would be, but it's not the best strategy in the world, I'll be honest, but my strategy was to just go and do this first half about 2:45 and hope my legs could kind of hold me out throughout the race or as long as they possibly could. And if I have to walk for most of this race, then that's what I'll do, even if I can't complete it in 6.5 hours. I wanted to at least just be able to finish on my own this year.
Yeah.
So I was looking for Austin about the halfway point, and I feel so bad because he's an amazing person.
Let me just set the stage for a moment. Austin, who is 3 cycles deep on a pretty rough chemo treatment and had just received chemo like 3 days before this race.
Yeah, the race is on a Sunday and he got chemo on a Thursday.
Yeah, and he's trying to meet up with JD.
So he's maybe not in the best spot physically wise. Mentally, he was trying to hype me up and be a good friend, but physically, maybe a little bit rough. So I'm looking for him, and I must have just totally either missed him or I did something wrong because I didn't see him.
Well, it's hard when, especially at like mile 13 there are a lot of people. There's a lot of direction changes with the half marathon breaking out. There's a lot of stuff going on right at that specific spot.
Yeah, and I think if I had to go back and do it over again, I would have probably had him. I should have been more specific on where I wanted him to meet me and probably had him, like you said, probably meet me closer to mile 12 instead of 13 where the cutoff is. Because I know we did that last year and that was convenient, but that's okay. It's just a learning experience. Regardless, I didn't see him, and what I needed from him was to hopefully refill my water pack, but also I had my other shirt and some extra gels in there. I didn't want to take all of them with me at one time because that was going to really weigh me down. Especially the shirt wouldn't have been so bad, but just for convenience's sake, I didn't want to have it with me. So I didn't see him, and then I had to call him real quick, and we were able to coordinate it and make it work at about mile 17. But at that point, I got ahead of my pacers for the 5.5 hour finish, which is that was my new plan. Is like, I don't know if Austin's going to meet me, and I hope he does, but if not, I'll just take off my shirt, and unfortunately people have to see me shirtless, and that'll be sad, but hopefully it won't be the worst part of their day. And then the other part was just trying to make sure that since I still had my long sleeve shirt on, to keep myself hydrated enough and get ahead of the pacers. And if something does happen, I can at least fall back and they can kind of help guide me through the race. So got ahead of them. One thing that helped me a lot throughout this race as well is most of my runs, I've never really saw anybody else running. Maybe I saw 1 or 2 other people running as I was doing these long runs throughout the year, but never really saw anyone, never ran with anyone. Like I said, just wanted to do it by myself. So this was a really nice change of pace to not just do it with all these people, but kind of have a conversation with them. It kind of took our minds off of things, especially for the full. That was really, really important because despite how fun it was, you do kind of remember that your legs are aching and things are tiring, and it can be kind of overwhelming and a little demoralizing when you're feeling tired and you look down at your watch and you still got quite a ways to go. So about mile 17 is when Ohio Stadium kicked in. And at that point, I was really starting to hurt. Kind of had to run, walk. I was ahead of the Pacers, but I was very dehydrated at that point. I took my last bathroom break of the race, and I barely peed anything. It was like an apple juice color at that point. So I knew I was in a rough spot, and, thankfully, knight in shining armor came and saved the day. And my ginger,
after he ran for miles to try to track you down and catch up to you.
He did, yeah.
Again, 3 days out from his third cycle of chemo.
He did. I didn't know when I would see Austin, but I saw him right after mile 17. He had got parked and got me all my stuff and gave me a nice pep talk, and I was on my way, and had kind of a fun moment there for a second of doing a Midwest nice off to each other, as I call it, where we just profusely apologize to each other for, oh, this is my fault. Oh, no, I'm sorry, sort of deal.
Too much extreme ownership.
Pretty much. That's probably a better way to put it.
It's better than the other way around, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm just oh, it's all your fault. No, it's your fault. That's fair.
Oh, man.
That's a good point. Yeah, Jocko would like that.
Yeah, he would.
He would. So, Austin's story, unfortunately, he's not here to tell it. But from what he told me, he had been trying to run me down and saw me and chased me for maybe a quarter, half a mile, trying to yell for me. I never heard him and ran past him. So he's gassed at this point. And then I call him and I'm meet me at Ohio Stadium. So he kind of probably does this huge sigh and dread. So he's got to go 2 or 3 miles back to the car and try to find some sort of way to park and get close to me, because for this marathon, they don't just shut down the street for the course. It's some of the back streets as well behind it and stuff for medical people or for other reasons. So I was very lucky. And for the second marathon in a row, he kind of saved the day for me. It was him and Courtney last year. And Courtney still did an amazing job this year. But Austin really, if anyone really saved my race, it was definitely Austin. I'm just immensely grateful for him for being there when I needed him the most.
Heck yeah. Yeah. From there, how did it, because it was pretty even though it got tough, it was pretty uneventful till the finish, correct?
At that point, you kind of, I don't know, a funny way to describe it at that point, I'd got to Ohio Stadium, I had ran pretty far, I was feeling, I think I even joked with him of you want to just put me in the car and we can go back. I feel like I ran, I did my workout for the day. I'm good. But no, I knew I had still another 10 miles to go. And so nothing really eventful happened until about mile 20 or so. I kind of walked, ran. I didn't really ever see my Pacers for the rest of the race. That was about the only sad thing, is I was hoping to run into them again, and never saw some of the people that I talked to. I kind of started getting ahead of them, which I guess is good, but I would have been more, enjoyable to have ran and finished with somebody like we did last year. But that's okay. It was just a different experience this year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it kind of reflects your journey of this year, doing a lot of training by yourself, doing a lot of prep work by yourself, just kind of that whole idea of going off kind of on your own to find your own potential. What can I truly make happen when it's just me? There's nobody else I can blame this on. There's no other excuses. It's just me against me, and what can I make happen?
Yeah, pretty much.
And how did it feel to cross that finish line under those terms?
It was pretty spectacular. The one major thing that happened that was really great is we got to Upper Arlington at about mile 20 or 21, and people there were handing out some fruit snacks and tangerines and things like that. And I don't know if I necessarily needed the food, but it really was a nice break from
stuff to get, right?
Yeah, some simple sugars to break up, because at that point I just been having gel after gel. Mm-hmm. So just something solid really helped me as well, kind of break up the monotony, but give me some fuel right there, because I probably took my second Tylenol right around there, because I was cramping really, really bad at 20 and 21, just how hot it was getting and everything. There just comes a point at least for me, where you're overheated and you've ran that much, like unless I was going to stop and pop a million salt sticks, I was just going to have to be overheated and cramped. And I knew that. The pain never got to a point where it was unbearable. It was more of the cardio that really kind of saved it for me. I think that's what kind of kept me calm as well, of just like, even though everything hurts, I can still think, I can still breathe, There's no reason I can't keep going right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I remember like we were tracking you on the phone, which wasn't always the most accurate, I think, but we saw you were getting close to the finish. And one thing I love about this race is you're able to kind of walk back down into the finish line area as like a finisher or a spectator and see some of your friends like right up close finish, which is really cool because there's a lot of races that they do not let you do that. But I like, dude, I had to get down there and witness that. And, go back down in there right by the finish line. And I see you do your like iconic dive across the finish line. And then you come across and I'm like all hyped up and I'm yelling at you, cheering for you. And you do not say a word. Like you did not even look at me. And at first I'm like, is he okay? And then I was like, he's okay. But then there's like 3 different medical people that are eyeing you like a hawk. They are standing there. They're like, I don't think he's okay. And I look at him. I'm like, he's fine. He's fine. They did not believe me. But you walk over to one of the people handing out waters. And I think this was even before you got your medal. You walk over to the person handing out the water. And like you immediately, instead of drinking the water, you dump the entire bottle on your head.
Yeah.
And then it's like instantly you like kind of snap out of it and you get that smile on your face. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's good to go.
I just needed a second there.
Yeah.
Like when I saw you, I was happy to finish. And like, I mean, it was a little over the top dramatic for sure to, do a dive kind of spread out across the finish.
Oh, it was cool though. It's going to make a great photo.
It was. That's what I was thinking at the end. Like, I should just go slow and make it
Have you seen the
Instagram
photos
worthy.
yet? Did they get a finish line photo of you doing that?
Yeah.
Heck
they
yeah.
did. It was an inception photo because it's a photo of Austin taking a photo of me finishing. So it was great.
I like it.
But that was probably the last 2 kind of memorable things I remember about the end of the race. There's a really nice girl in Upper Arlington handing out stickers. So it was a nice cat sticker that helped get me through, put it on my bib. But there was a nice kid as well that like at mile 23 had a bottle of water, and I was overheated pretty bad, and I just needed to dump that on my back and kind of coast through that. I was really trying to, at that point, think about like, all right, if I get to the park, then we're almost done. And that was the only thing kind of frustrating is like, I forgot the park is actually like mile 25. I thought it was a little closer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But you do pass some bars at like mile 23 or 24, people hanging out, having a good time, looking at you like, man.
Well, you're just cruising by.
Right. Well, I'm in a world of hurt, and these people are eating wings and drinking beer.
Hey, man, you got to stay hard, like David Goggins would say.
That's true.
Yeah.
But that was mostly my goal. I mean, that was the main goal, is just finishing this year. It's not that I intentionally tried to hold back, but I did actually I bring all that up to say I did kind of have that in my mind as we were getting close to the finish of like, I mean, I think even my first year I watched someone collapse right before the finish, and it was more important to me to finish than maybe like go all out and almost collapse at the finish, for better or worse. So I did maybe hold a little bit back until that last mile. My dad was nice enough to like see me off at the end, and I saw Matt Eichert there right before like a half mile. So seeing some people kind of was nice. And whenever I got to the top of the hill and I saw everyone there, I didn't really think about, as much as I joked about having an Instagram moment, I really just wanted to leave it all out there at the very end. There were some people in front of me. It was kind of a perfect opportunity to finish that race strong.
Yeah.
And when I appreciated you catching me there at the end, and it was nice to have like a moment there. I guess I just wanted a second there to kind of like take it all in and like think for a second of just like, oh, it is finally over now.
Yeah, 100%, man. I get that. Absolutely. There's nothing, and until you've experienced this for yourself, there's nothing quite like that feeling of crossing the finish line of a distance that is beyond your potential. It's whatever that distance is for you. You know, there's all sorts of different challenges and feats you can overcome and chase out there. But there's something unique about the process of endurance. And for hours, like literally 5.5 hours, you forced yourself to keep going. Like every single step through pain after pain after pain, you kept going. And you ultimately cross that finish line. It's like it's all over, and you get to calm down and relax and refuel and drink. And so, and it's like you go from, I think you just change your situation so starkly, so quickly. You go from being in an immense amount of pain and drive and focus and trying to force yourself through to all of a sudden it's over and there's relief. And you know, the kind of mental high you get from that, like I just don't know that can be matched. And it's a really cool, I think it's just a reinforcement to me that like the human mind is meant to go through challenge and to face it, and most importantly to overcome it. And that's how we build, I mean, it's how we build physical strength, but it's how we build an insane amount of mental strength and fortitude. And those moments are some of the greatest moments you'll ever experience. And they'll also carry over to so many other aspects of your life as well that I think is really cool. But one thing I definitely wanted to chat about before we wrap up here, and I mentioned at the beginning, we're definitely going to have some of these people on, but I wanted to go through some of our, like, because we had so many incredible stories of people up here.
Sure.
And there's two in particular that really stand out in my mind, but I wanted to hear, like, what was your, like, favorite story of some of the people who ran with us this year?
I mean, I know it's going to be like a real obvious choice.
Yeah, go for it.
But I mean, it's kind of hard not to like cheer for Leo and his story.
100%, man.
I mean, I'm still don't know Natalie and Leo as much as you and Austin do, but I think a race like that where he got to run with Andrew and had someone to pace him, which was great. And he set a PR and was in a very similar spot where he did that race, not knowing if he could even finish it. Not really even training for that distance either. Like, at least for me, I've trained up and I somewhat felt like I could do the race, but not sure. Whereas I think he was just totally unsure if he could even do the whole thing, let alone how fast he could do it. You know, I think his character, especially, not just for someone so young, as you've said before, but just his character for someone in general, just showed through on that day far more than like anything he could have possibly said or done.
100%. And you guys know Leo. He and his mom were actually both on this podcast just a few weeks ago. And at 13 years old, he was able to come on and tell some of his story and his experience as an athlete. He came on the show and talked about it with us, and it was such a cool experience. We got to chat with him a little bit. Then we chatted with his mom, Natalie, afterward, had a good conversation. But what was so cool about that story is Leo is just an incredible athlete. But not only is he an incredible athlete, he has an insanely powerful mindset that he built from facing some of the most challenging things in life. You know, when he was 5 years old, he was diagnosed with leukemia and battled it for 3 years straight. And during that time, he faced many life-threatening scenarios. You know, he comes out of it, and it just so happens that this year, in June, he was pronounced 5 years cancer-free. And that is when he is considered cured. And that is an unbelievable milestone for anybody who's ever battled cancer to reach. It's such a cool experience to achieve that. And he's been chasing so many incredible things in his life. You know, he went out and ran Pittsburgh Marathon with us in the relay, did 4.5 miles of that relay. And that was the city he battled cancer in. So it was a really cool full circle moment for him to get to do that. And throughout the summer, Natalie sent me more and more videos of his updates on his running. And I start realizing, I'm like, this kid could do the half marathon with us. even if he doesn't do it at a fast pace or anything, like he could complete it, and that'd be a freaking sweet thing for him to experience. And not only that, but he serves as a massive role model to the kids going through treatment that are on the course now, as far as what they will be capable of in their lives. And so I start messaging Natalie. I'm like, hey, like, he can do this. Like, he should do this with us. We had to go through some intense struggles to try to get them a bib because it sold out really early this year, and we were able to find a transfer for him. Huge thanks to the people who helped us work that out. But he came out, and not only did he complete the half marathon, he absolutely crushed it. And like you said, thankfully he had Andrew to help pace him and really push him through that race. Somebody who's got a good amount of experience. But beyond that, like, he went out and did his first ever half marathon ever in an hour and 45 minutes as a 13-year-old. Like, he got sixth place in his age group of the entire 19,000 people that were out there, and just had an insane race. So that was definitely one of the most memorable stories of this year's marathon. And we were so honored to have him and Natalie as a part of that weekend. And I think we will definitely have them back and doing it with us again next year. And hopefully he'll keep increasing that or keep getting a better and better time till he hits 16 and he can crush the full, that'll be an awesome experience to witness as well. But two of the stories that really stuck out to me that I thought were awesome. First was Jen Workman, Clayton's wife. She didn't just crush it race day. She has been crushing it all year. This is a woman who's an incredible strength athlete and works very hard and competes and does very well in powerlifting. But she just has a phenomenal personality, incredibly high energy, and you just can't help but smile when you're around her. And she was working so hard all year to train for this race. Like, she ended up having a really bad foot injury at one point that took months and months to heal. She ended up having a really bad bout of COVID just like a month before the race, and was still training through COVID. And it's just like every time I got on my phone, I'd see another story of her, like, her 5 mile run, and then her 6 mile and 7 mile. It was just cool. I kept seeing the distance go up and up and up, and it was just so consistent and so strong. And it was so cool. Pete and I ended up catching up with her right at the end of the race, and we got to finish, me and Pete and her and another one of her friends who was running. And we all got to kind of go in where the half marathon breaks off and kind of run, down that little hill underneath the bridge and then come up to see the finish line together. And right as we're coming under that bridge and we can see the finish line, I just kind of look over and I'm like, how cool would it be if you finish this race running across the finish line? Because all of us had done a lot of walking in our race, to be able to manage the immensity of the distance. And I wasn't sure quite how she'd take those words, because, when you get right to the end there, you're so beaten down that you are in a special, special place. And so I wasn't sure how she'd take those words, but I was like, I gotta put this in her brain and see, see if she's, wants to chase it or not. Because I just had this feeling like she could do it and she was going to do it. And she immediately was like on board, like ready to go. And she starts, we all decided, like, let's just ease into it. Let's start slow jogging. We'll get faster and faster. And she picks up speed and runs across that finish line. And man, it was just one of the coolest moments, one of the coolest experiences to witness her whole journey throughout this year, and then her crossing that finish line. And hopefully we'll get to tell more of her story, because it was just phenomenal all the way around. And can't congratulate her enough for that whole arc of a journey that she went through this year. But alongside her, we had another one of my good friends. He's been on the podcast multiple times. He's coming back on here again soon. Wade Smith. He came out. He's another phenomenal strength athlete, powerlifter. He's 21 years old and already approaching some national records, and has dreams and aspirations for world records in his lifetime and in his career as a powerlifter. He's incredibly dedicated to his craft, very knowledgeable, very skilled, and very just mature in his mindset. Not even just for his age, but just in general. He's very mature in his mindset and his approach to training and his journey. And you guys can go back and check his main episode out. We dropped it earlier this spring, where he, dives into a lot of the impossible challenges he's faced in his life to get where he is today. But he was inspired, even though he's right in the middle of meet prep for a big meet in December. And even though powerlifting and endurance running do not mix at all, he was inspired to come out and join us in Columbus. And he honestly crushed a half marathon, like super hard. This dude is almost 300 pounds. He's a big, tall guy, big, strong, muscular guy. His body has a very high demand for fuel, for oxygen, for hydration. And I caught up to him probably around mile 3 or so, I'd say. And he ends up taking off, and he finished in like 3 hours, 45 minutes for a half. This is his first ever half. I don't think he'd ever run more than like 4 or 5 miles before, ever in his life. He did absolutely zero training for this race, not because he didn't care to, but because he's in the middle of powerlifting prep, and that's his main sport and his main focus, and he's got big dreams in that area. And he just casually goes out on a weekend and crushes a half marathon. And the level of like mental strength and mindset it takes to have to push yourself through something like that is just phenomenal. So it was a huge honor to have him out there. Really cool to see him. And he and I had some fun exchanges, just like kind of, we like to kind of rag on each other a little bit. And it was fun. I'd see him stop at a water station. I was like, real men don't need water, even though I'm sitting here like chugging water at every single station, multiple cups, we like to have fun with it. But it was just really cool. Awesome to have him as a part of that experience. And, hope to have him and Jen and Leo and all of the team members back in the future, because that's really what last year and this year and has really grown to make this race so special, is that we're not like a traditional like running team. Like most of the people out here had never done a marathon distance before, never had really considered doing a marathon distance before. And a lot of them, a lot of us had challenges that you would maybe think would keep us from ever pursuing something like that. Yet everybody comes out, runs their own race, finds their own potential in the face of something that should be impossible, and everybody absolutely crushed. I think everybody crossed the finish line this year on our team.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was another huge piece collectively as a team. We probably had 20, 25 people running the race, something like that.
More or less.
And I know there were even people who were running, representing our team that weren't necessarily in our core group as well. That, I got to follow them on their Facebook updates and stuff like that. And they all crushed their races as well. But it's that team, it's that community, it's that environment of so many people coming together to find more meaning and potential and strength within themselves than they ever thought could possibly exist. And getting to step back and witness that same thing in other people, which we've been able to experience and we know is within them ourselves, getting to step back and witness that is one of the highest honors I think we could ever experience. And so we wanted to give you guys a special thanks and a special shout out to everyone who ran the race with us this weekend, everybody who came out and supported and was a part of the team this weekend, everyone who donated and helped spread awareness and advocacy for kids battling cancer this year with us, and for everyone who has just been a part of our movement and our message, our mission and our vision for the world and what we're trying to do at Impossible Performance. You guys are why we do everything we do, because we've been blessed in our lives to face challenges that have allowed us to find a deeper level of meaning and purpose and potential within ourselves. And as we've always said, once you see that potential in yourself, you see it in everyone around you. So our goal at the end of the day is to help as many people as we can through this message, through this mission, through this mindset, find that potential within themselves, because I can promise you, we all have inherent potential that we would never dream existed. And so many times, all it takes is the willingness to chase it. And so we want to help people chase that, help people pursue that, find that passion and purpose in their own life, go out and build themselves into an impossible version of themselves, somebody who would never have existed otherwise, and ultimately do something impossible for yourself so that you can turn around and help others do the same in their lives. That's what the Columbus Marathon is all about for us. That's why we're going to keep coming back every year to do it. We are laying out some game plans for next year, and I've got a particularly big thing in mind for a few years from now, which we'll be laying all that out for you guys, and we hope to have you join us in 2025. If you want to be a part of what we're doing, or a part of our marathon team, or a part of Impossible Performance in any way, reach out to us on Instagram. I'm at impossible.performance. JD, where can people find you?
On your case, the Coach 90.
Yes, sir. Someday we'll have to tell that story.
Indeed.
Story for a different day. Austin is at Austin_strength. We also have our kind of mental mindset coaching piece, some stuff we're going to be bringing you guys very soon here. That account you can follow. We're already starting to put up some content for it at impossible.minds. And of course, our podcast has a page of Welcome to the Impossible, how we open every single episode. You guys can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, any platform out there. We are on it. And as always, the number one thing we could ever ask you guys to do is to please share this podcast. If you've learned something from this episode or any other episode, send it to everybody and anybody you know who you think it would help. Because at the end of the day, that is the number one way we achieve our mission and our vision in this world. Because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, be impossible.